Hi, dear listeners. Thanks for tuning in. It can be a funny time of the year when we perhaps have less time than usual for our recovery practice, while we spend more time with those who often populate our step 10s. I just wanted to wish you a lovely festive break full of serenity wherever you are. This week we have Texas T, and as you'll hear in this rock and roll episode, she got sober on a Christmas day. Now, we recorded this episode a few weeks ago, but as fate would have it, it ends up getting published on another Christmas day. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to 12 Steps and 12 Questions. My name is Silvio and I'm an addict. This pod is full of personal and inspirational stories of recovery from addiction. And in every episode, I'll ask each guest the same 12 questions about their life, addiction, and recovery. Quick warning. There will be some graphic descriptions and a healthy amount of swearing. For this episode, please welcome Texas T.
Howdy, everybody. My name's Texas T. I'm an alcoholic that did a whole lot of drugs. And my sober date is December 25th, 1990, which means at the current time of this podcast, I have 33 years of sobriety, coming up on 34 really quick. And I got sober in Los Angeles, California. I grew up in Austin, Texas, and then I moved to LA, and that is where I got sober. I lived there 25 years, and I currently live in Berlin, Germany. I've been here 17 years, although I spend a big part of my year in Thailand on an island called Koh Samui. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of my mouth when you ask me these questions. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Texas. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Got to say though, getting sober on Christmas Day, that's pretty cool. So what a present, Santa Claus or what?
Well, I can tell you that was because I fell off the wagon. And when I had 7 months sober, this is how I really get to know my ego. My ego was telling me, you know what? When I had 6 months sober, I was at the halfway point to a year. When I had 7 months sober, my ego started telling me, you know what? If you're going to fall off the wagon, you better do it now, because I don't see you falling off the wagon when you get a year, because you won't want to raise your hand as a newcomer. You better do it now. So I did. I listened to that self-talking ego, and I went for it. And that was in like October. And so by Christmas Eve, which is your sponsor Young's anniversary.
Indeed, yeah.
I was cutting the deal with a God I did not know I believed in. And that's what's so funny about that, because when I first I'm sure I've listened to your podcast, so I know there's going to be a lot of God questions. So I'll save it for that. But, it was that God that I did not believe in, I cut a deal with. Okay, God, you give me one more good shot, one more, and then I'll quit. I promise I'll quit tomorrow. And so God gave me one more good shot. Next day was Christmas Day. And I talked to God, the God I didn't know I believed in, all day long. So that's why Christmas Day.
This is a great 2-minute trailer, I think, that we've just done for, the rest of the show. So let's get going. Question 1. Texas T, did you have any adverse childhood experiences?
When I heard that question, I'm kind of like, it's really hard for me to even think about my childhood, not because it was bad. I mean, what I thought was normal, what was my father was like a dictator. He was very controlling, and he was very, he yelled a lot. Yeah, he had an anger problem. And and he did beat us. I had an older brother and a younger brother, and he did beat us. That was passed down from his daddy. That it was a generational thing. I'm 69 years old, so I was born in 1955. So, back in those days, it wasn't unusual for people to spank or whip their children. And that was just a generational handed down from the generations before them. But, and I'm not going to say, I mean, I didn't enjoy being whipped. I wasn't, I wasn't actually, it didn't make me go into S&M, but, I mean, yeah, I was terrified of my daddy, yet he had that warm part of him that I loved so much. And let me just say that, to me, it was it wasn't like I didn't feel in self-pity. Oh, my daddy beats me, he yells at me, and all of that stuff. It was, I did have to go to the adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional family for a little while, because I realized that like when I would go to a job interview, I was always nervous, and I realized that it was because I was trying to please my daddy, and I couldn't be authentic. I had to, I was, and I went, whoa, I was like 30-something years old, and I'm like, this is creepy. So I went to the adult child, the ACA program for a short bit, because I wanted to see where this was coming from and what to do about it. And within a very short time, but that I could identify little things like that were carryover from growing up, with my daddy. And
how often did this happen, may I ask?
Only when I was bad. But my dad, it's just like the mantra at my house from my mother: don't upset your father. Don't upset your father. So I try to live by that mantra. I mean, it wasn't, but let me tell you what happened because of these 12-step programs, especially AA, was instead of blaming my dad for things, I walked in his shoes. And then when I walked in his shoes, and I thought, gosh, but I mean, I learned how to be angry for my dad, so I was really good at it. And I'll save that for the what's my worst character defect down the line of these questions. But the thing is, when I started walking in my dad's shoes, and I thought, God, how horrible it must have been, because my mom used to say, wait, I remember when I was a little kid, wait till your daddy gets home. And so it was my dad, my poor dad, us kids, we'd be like shaking our boots because we knew we'd be getting a whipping. But my poor dad, he would get up early and go to work and do his job. And then he had to come home and beat the kids. And I thought, oh, that must have been horrible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I started walking in his shoes and realizing that he did the best he could, and realizing that he didn't have a solution for his anger like I do, by working these steps and seeing how my anger affects my relationships, and it just affects my state of mind, and that there's a solution, that there is a power that I can ask to remove that in the moment I'm in. And let me tell you something, my anger, I hardly have anger anymore.
Yeah.
And so my dad didn't get the chance to unlearn his anger.
Yeah. And that's really wonderful knowledge, and the result of a spiritual development that you had in your adult life. But of course, when you're a kid, you don't know anything about this, right? So as a child, my father, he beat me sometimes. He beat my sister quite a bit. And I think of my father, and I have made my amends with my father, and have nothing but love for him today. But at the time,
Yes.
It was very much different, right? And I think of him sometimes as being perhaps a dry drunk, or behaving like a dry drunk, where, we tiptoe around him, and, you can't upset him, and you have to, and so on and so forth, So I'm hearing that it's like somewhat a similar experience for you.
Well, let me tell you a good story that just popped into my mind. I think I was 17, because I was always counting down the days when I turned 18 so I could move out of the house.
Sure.
So I was 17. I came home. I was high, and 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 my parents' kitchen, the whole ceiling of the kitchen was one big fluorescent light. So they would always pull me under, let me look at your eyes. And one night my mom and dad were both awake waiting for me. And my dad asked me, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And
whoa.
I said, well, I can't tell. I guess I was living moment to moment then and didn't know it, because I said, well, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you right now, I'm going to bed. So I went into my room and I went to bed. And my dad came in there and he was really mad at me because I was already in bed, almost passed out. And he grabbed me by the leg and he pulled me off the bed. And there happened to be a little spring sticking out of the side. So it kind of ripped my back open, which really made me mad. So I screamed for my younger brother, who was still living at home, to call the police. Call the police, call the police. And Dad's beating me. And my dad got the hurt look on my dad's face. I'll never forget it. And I was trashed, but that look on his face, and he said, you would do that to your father? And it hurt him so bad. And I said, you're damn right I would. But I'll never forget how hurt that was, that his daughter would call the police on him.
It sounds like it was a loud household, a bit like my own household when I was a kid. Am I right?
Only when my dad was busy yelping out instructions and telling us what was, how to do things and all that. But like you, I ended up realizing that my fear of my father was because I always, whenever I spoke to him on the phone, I always was acting like a child. I was still in my child mindset. And when I finally realized, wait a minute, I'm in my 30s. I'm in my, because I got sober when I was 35. And I'm like, I'm not acting like an adult. So when I started talking, when my father and he lived in Austin, I lived in LA. When we were talking on the phone, when I would react like an adult, because I was changing, he started changing. He stopped treating me like a child because I stopped acting like a child. So I got to see that it was me who needed to change. And the more I changed, the more he changed. And we had the most amazing relationship. And he eventually died of cancer. But man, I tell you what, this program, it works miracles. If you work it.
Before we get to the miracles, let's stay a little bit still in Austin, Texas here. And this is what, the 1960s, more or less.
Oh, yeah.
Did you get on with your brothers and sisters? With your brothers, sorry. Did you get on with your brothers? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. It's things changed after I moved out of the house, but as kids, yeah, we got along really good. We used to have fun picking on each other, but at the same time, we would defend each other. Like one time we were riding the bus home, me and my younger brother, and some guy that was in my grade was bullying my little brother. And so, I punched him out, and everybody, everyone, yay, but and my little brother's just like my hero, so yeah. We got along pretty well.
So our question 2 is, what did the moment you first got hooked, what did the fun times, quote unquote, look like? So it's the late 1960s in Texas. You come from a family where, yes, there is a stern father and a little bit of violence, socially accepted at the time, but still
Yeah.
not a great experience, to have that happen to you. But you coming out of this childhood, growing up to be a young woman, and at some point, something gets introduced into your life, and it sticks.
Oh,
What was that?
well, everything was pretty normal for me. I mean, uh, let me just say I didn't really have. I know a lot of people in these 12-step programs. They talk about their childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the person that we were talking about before this podcast started, now that's what I would call childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it wasn't that traumatic. I mean, yeah, I had the fear of angry people. I had the fear of people that would yell at me, or I had the fear of someone, you know, telling me I was, that I wasn't perfect, or what. My dad deal. I sure I had a lot of fear, but nothing that these steps couldn't help me work through, which is I'm very fortunate for that. And I felt bad for the people that had the really, really, really bad trauma. So let me just say that. So, and let me also say that, because my parents, I asked them, because I grew up, let's see, by 1962 or 63, I was drinking. And the first time I drank, my parents were out of town, so we had a little party. I was in either seventh or eighth grade, I can't remember, but I remember I had passed out on my mom and dad's bed, and I came to, and I said to myself, was I don't know if that was a dream or if that was reality, but whatever it is, I'm in love. I fell in love with alcohol that first time. I mean, I had drank alcohol a little bit as a kid. My grandfather would let us have a beer, but I had never had my own personal party and fallen in love.
How old were you then when you had your first personal party?
12 or 13,
Okay.
something like that. And I mean, I'll never forget that feeling. I've never loved anybody or anything as much as I still love alcohol. When I think of alcohol, I'm in love. But it's kind of like when you have a lover and you keep breaking up with them, and you get back together and it doesn't work out. It does for like 10 minutes and then it doesn't work out. That's kind of how alcohol is. So finally, because I tried every trick in the book to quit. Finally, you realize I love this person, but I can't be with them.
Yeah.
And that's how it was for me with alcohol.
It's really interesting what you say, because it's difficult for me to say it, but it is true. I love cocaine, right? I don't like to admit to it still, right? I still don't like to, but it is true. There is a famous for me. There's a line in, it's a television drama called The Nick with Clive Owen, and he plays this really brilliant surgeon in the early 1900s in a New York hospital, and he's heavily cocaine addicted. And in this one episode, he can't get any cocaine, and this nurse comes up to him and says, "Dr. Thackeray, what is it that you want? What can I do to help you?" And he says to her, looks her dead in the eyes and says, "Find me an ocean of cocaine." And that is what I wanted. And you're quite right to say that it's a particular kind of love. Well, it's not really love, but it's a particular kind of love, and it's so powerful and so self-destructive that either it kills you or you find a way of separating yourself from it. And I still have that in me, so I can so relate to what you just said there.
Yeah, I always felt bad for my partners, because they were always my second love.
Mhm.
My first love, and and then when I was like, I don't know, I started smoking pot. That pot was never my deal. I just did it because the socially, it was a thing to do. But boy, then I started, doing these white crosses, the speed, to help me do my homework right.
Mm.
And I felt, and I'm like, whoa, I like this. And then when I was like, I think I was seven, then I started snorting drugs and whatever. But when I was 17, I started shooting drugs, and it was very now that was weird because my family was a middle class family, so I was going home with all these fucking syringe marks in my arm, but I covered up pretty good. But my parents never talked about the elephant in the room, and which is weird, And I started out shooting cocaine, your favorite, and then and then uh and then I tried heroin, and then which was my boyfriend at the time's favorite, and then I tried the speedball, the cocaine, heroin, and I thought, whoa, now this is really good. And then I tried methadone, and that's when I went, oh, okay, this is the one, which
Mm.
is
Which is an amphetamine, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, which in crystal meth, which in Austin where I grew up, they called it the poor man's cocaine, and the thing is, it's like, and don't take offense to this, but I always thought, yeah, those snooty cocaine addicts who have to buy more, and it's more expensive, where I can get, a quarter of a gram and be up for 2 days, man.
Yeah, I used to be that person as well at a different time in my life. So, I like all kinds of uppers, right? So, that includes any kind of speed, crystal, whatever it was. So I'm not offended
Yeah.
at all. But thank you. I love this sort of give and take between junkies here, and that we're having. But what I'd really love to know is did you at that time, was this just here I am, I'm having a good time, I'm a young girl, young woman, I'm out and about, I'm having a good time, or was there any kind of thinking along the lines of, whoa, this is getting out of hand, or, well, I'm liking this stuff a bit too much? Was that present in any which way, shape, or form, or not yet?
Oh, no, 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 no. My whole mindset was, I'm doing this for the rest of my life.
Mm.
I want to feel like this the rest of my life. And I wrap my entire life around that. I uh I became a hairdresser. Hairdressers get to do, I mean, a hairdresser is the perfect career for someone, or job for someone who wants to be drunk and high. And I also that I start and I was always part of the music scene. I always, because I grew up in Austin, Texas. I had the best music in the world there, so I was always, and musicians love to get high and drunk. So, these are the people and the things that I wrap my entire life around. And eventually I became a singer in a band, I moved to Los Angeles where I think I was like 28 maybe, a and, so my if it didn't involve alcohol or drugs, I didn't wanna do it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And how was you using at that time? How would you characterize it? Was it daily, almost daily? Where were you at with this?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
I mean, once I had one real job, and that was when I was 17, and my dad got it for me, working in a what's it called? Where they do the money, where they take care of the financial books.
Like an accountant?
Yeah, 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 yeah. But I was like a baby accountant. I did all the little work that the main guy didn't do. And I worked there from like 17 till maybe 19. I'm not sure. But I feel so sorry for them because, I was either really high at work, or and I'm trying to hide it. I mean, I used to wear these green pantyhose so that they wouldn't see how green I was. But when I was a kid, I hadn't turned into, because, once I started getting into the music scene, my parents changed, and you could tell that I was a drug, alcohol loving weirdo. But then when I was working at that first job, I just looked like the girl next door, and but so, and of course I loved the feeling of getting away with things. I loved getting away with it. I loved getting into all these nightclubs when I was 18, but the age was 21, the legal age was 21, but I loved getting away with that. And I always loved getting away with things. And I always thought I was so clever, and I
Yeah.
always had my drugs, I always had my alcohol. I was never from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to bed. One time I got alcohol poisoning, and so what happened was when I was living in LA. I got alcohol poisoning. I had this high pitched hum in my head for 3 days. I couldn't take a drink. If I took a drink of alcohol, the hum and the pitch got louder.
Oh,
So
God.
I had to wait for that hum to go down. It took like 3 days. And that's the only reason I quit drinking for 3 days, is because but I was sitting there anxiously waiting for that hum to go away so I could get back in business, man. You know?
Well, word to the wise, if you are drinking to the point where you've got a weird hum in your head and you can't get rid of it and you're waiting desperately for it to leave you so you can drink more, maybe you have a problem.
Yeah, maybe so. But I was in denial, and the thing is, it's kind of, I blew out some circuits, but so what? Let me have a beer, let me have a drink. But I mean, I still did not care.
That is very punk rock, I have to say. It's really on
Yeah,
brand.
yeah. I mean, it was to me, it was just like I didn't even think about whether I was gonna die or not. It didn't occur to me, there was no sane thinking. It was just like the party is on until I didn't realize the party would end someday, but it did.
Now, question 3 is, what were your worst consequences? And finally, your rock bottom. So really what we're asking for is, what is the progression? What was the progression like until you actually came into the rooms, you realized you needed help? What did that look like? So far you've moved to LA, and it sounds like you were still, while you were using and drinking heavily, you still didn't really seem to have too many really bad consequences. But at some point, they appeared. Talk to us about that.
It was great because the apartment building I lived in was in Hollywood, and well, the plumber at one point put a sign out on the for rent sign that said the retirement home for the chemically dependent, which was really funny because everybody in my building, we all partied, we all did drugs, we all drank, we all did it all. And so what happened was, and people still can't believe I got sober in that building. I didn't have to move because when you're done, you're done.
Yeah, that's true.
And they were still like, I can't believe you quit when your cocaine dealer's right across the courtyard, and the thing is, it's just like whatever. But what happened to me was I actually had a few friends. Like, I feel so sorry for the bass player that was in my band at that time. He was sober. He lived in my building,
Oh, God.
and he was sober. So every time after our shows, they'd go, "Come on, come party with us," and he'd go, "No, I'm going to the late night AA meeting." And I mean, LA was so good at that; it made sure that you had a meeting to go to. Up until the last minute of alcohol sales, it was so brilliant. But and I'd always go, "God, you're such a wimp. I can't believe you have to go to an AA meeting instead of come party with us." And I feel bad. But why he was one of the guys that took me to meetings because we lived in the same building when I first started going to AA, and I bet he was relieved. But but I had a few friends in AA that would come and they planted seeds, so I knew I had a place to go when I was ready. But what really happened was I my blacking out became more more often and more frequent, more regular, and so it's kind of like one day I'd be walking down the street to go get, as I called it, my nerve nectar. My 6 pack, as I called it, brutal buds, those 16 ouncers, uh, up at this corner store, and it would occur to me that somebody could pull over in their car, get out of their car, beat the crap out of me, get back in their car, and it was probably something I deserved because but I had blacked it out. And so I started, these little thoughts started occurring to me, and I'm like, "Huh, yeah, this blackout's getting a little dangerous," because I didn't know if what I had done was dreamt or reality. And then I actually started going to this program called Emotional Health Anonymous in LA because I wouldn't have to stop drinking. But I knew I had some problems, you know,
Mm.
and and I called it, of course, EHA, Emotional Health Anonymous, the HA,
Yeah, yeah, very good.
and and in that program you go, "Hey, my name's Texas T, and I'm a neurotic," which was completely true because I personally think that all alcoholics are neurotics. Not not all neurotics are alcoholic, but I think all alcoholics are neurotic. So that was great, and I'd always have a a a 6 pack out in the car. My friend would take me because I convinced him that he was a neurotic and he needed to go. And I always had a 6 pack out in the car, so the minute I get out of there, I could slam a few. But that one really started me learn to watch my mind and what my mind tells me. And the first thing I noticed was one time when I went to the store and I was gonna get uh, a pint of Jim Beam. I used to love Jim Beam. I go, "Beam me up, Jimmy."
Mm-hmm.
And but I also called it my troublemaker because every time I drank Jim Beam, I got in trouble. But I started when I would go to the store and I'd eyeball that Jim Beam and I'd ask myself, "Do I want to drink this because I want to sabotage my life today? Or do I just feel like drinking some Jim Beam?"
Mm.
Because every time I drank Jim Beam, I'm getting that self-sabotage deal. So, this is how my drinking changed. It started becoming, uh, it wasn't working for me, it was working against me.
So, if I'm getting this right, you were suffering quite sort of few blackouts, really, right? Where you just
Oh,
lose
absolutely.
consciousness about what's happening, but it's a zombiedom of some sort, where you're still actually out and about, you're still doing things,
Oh,
but you
yeah.
cannot remember them. And a word about those blackouts, I think they occur, certainly for me, they occurred really late on. It took me a long time to, quote unquote, get there, so to speak.
Yes, yes.
Thankfully, they're terrifying, absolutely terrifying, because you lose control, you lose consciousness. I mean, my addiction was a car without brakes at this point anyway. So I get in the car, all there is the gas pedal, and here I am, and all of a sudden, not only am I in this car without brakes, I'm also passing out while I'm actually at the wheel.
Oh, there you
You
go.
know, and what would happen was that I'd wake up. Maybe, let's say I was downstairs in the living room, and by this time I was only using by myself. I didn't really want anybody around, around, and then I wake up and it's dark outside, and I'm upstairs and I'm half clothed, and there's some bags around me, maybe some beer or something, and I don't know what happened. I have to look at my phone to see whom have I called. Where did I get some money out? Is the car still outside? It's terrifying, really terrifying when it happens. So yeah, I mean, we can chuckle about it now, and it's great that we can.
Oh, I can definitely chuckle about it.
But if there's someone listening, where if you haven't found the rooms yet and you are in the blackout zone, get help. Get help. It's a telltale sign. I think you don't get a lot of blackouts unless you've got a real problem.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and of course, I didn't want to tell people about it because they might think I have a drinking problem.
Yes, of course.
So I didn't tell them, but yeah, it can be terrifying. And you're talking about the car without the brakes. I mean, that's what I went for with my drinking and my drugging. But as you said, when I became a blackout driver, I didn't know what kind of trouble I was going to wake up to, or if I should call somebody and ask them what happened, or wait for the phone to call, because there were always people that were going to call me and tell me what happened. And so, yeah, if you're a blackout drinker, you may have a problem. Let me just tell you, you may have a problem. And
Houston, we have a problem, says Texas.
Yeah. And so what happened was my drinking became more, I guess I got more reckless to the point where I didn't know, I couldn't really talk to people about it because they might think I have a problem. And I tried all that controlled drinking. If you read the list in the book and then add about 20 more ways to control drinking, I tried all of that. And, and I'd always end up going to the my favorite bar at the end of the night and go, I didn't drink tonight, I went to 3 clubs and give me a troublemaker, which was a pint of beer with a shot of whiskey. You drop it in there and then it boils. It's so cool. But so and I wake up the next day. Well, that didn't work. Every day I was waking up with that. And then one night I had this drink. I woke up and I visualized myself as a 40-year-old woman with a shopping cart on the streets of LA, having to tell jokes to make enough money to get my booze.
Plenty of them out there.
Yeah, and that visual really, I went, you know what? And I the first time I stopped drinking was right before my 35th birthday. So I thought, you know what? Maybe I can get a handle on it now. And also, I was waking up every day with a hole in my soul. Yeah. That's what really did it, was that hole in my soul. And nothing could fill that hole. And I didn't know at the time it was a God-sized hole. I didn't know, that it could be because, I was still living with my ego, and I didn't even know I was living on my ego until I came to AA, and then I started learning all this stuff. But I remember when my friends that had been that were already in AA, when they started taking the meetings, I'll never forget how grateful I am to them, and how when I walked into the meeting, of course, I don't know about you, but I was like terrified to walk into a meeting. But I didn't really have any problem admitting I was an alcoholic or an addict, because I knew from that first time I passed out in my mom's and dad's bed, where I woke up in love with alcohol. I knew at that time I was an alcoholic, because that was my life.
Yeah, so that was from your very first blackout. You still remember that there's no other way of looking at this but to say that you're an alcoholic. Understand?
Oh yeah.
So if I can sum this up, it was a sort of gradual getting worse and worse and worse, and then finding it's a moment of clarity where you saw yourself a few years away, and that you knew, if I don't stop, I'm going to end up on the street. I'm going to have going to not essentially be homeless and penniless, and you saw your own deterioration sort of before your eyes and thought, do you know what, I think I need to do something about this.
And that pain of that hole in my soul was really, those two things really convinced me. And also, I remember my mom telling me, and you know what, you're not good at telling jokes, so you're going to be a bad bag lady.
Right, okay.
And
Yeah.
but it was that hole in my soul every morning when I would wake up, and I felt so hopeless and just yeah, hopeless. I was a hopeless alcoholic. When I had become a hopeless alcoholic, that's when I was ready.
Now, dovetailing just with that, at your worst, and that's our question 4, at your worst, did you want to die? Did you consider suicide?
Oh, absolutely. And even in sobriety, I've because I was diagnosed with clinical depression when I was in my, I think, early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So which is funny because that psychiatrist didn't think I was going to continue drinking and doing drugs, which it's uh, you know, so because he gave me antidepressants, and so the antidepressants got me to where I wasn't depressed. So because when I was really depressed, I didn't even feel like drinking or doing drugs. I was actually too depressed to kill myself. So that's when I knew I was in trouble.
Yeah.
And then when the antidepressants started helping my depression, then I'm like, oh, I can drink and do drugs again. I mean, I was crying. My thought life was a little bit unmanageable, and that's what I found out in that second half of step 1, that I have an unmanageable thought life.
Can I just ask you just said something really interesting, which is that there were times where you felt too depressed to get drunk and do drugs. Am I getting this right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting because I lived in that space for quite a long time, for a few years actually. After my first bout of using ended in my mid-20s, and I was in such a terrible place that I ended up not drinking and not using because I just couldn't. It was too dark, everything was too bad, and so I don't know whether it was a sense of self-preservation or whether my some sort of sanity came to me that the drinks and the drugs were a problem and were the problem. Or I don't know exactly what it was, or if my disease just went a bit dormant for a while, which it can do, right?
Well, maybe you had an intuitive thought that a drink or a drug was not going to fix the darkness you
Yeah,
were
that's for
in.
sure, yeah.
Because I knew it was just like, there's nothing strong enough to fix this darkness. Not drug and alcohol. But the thing is, I carried my depression into my sobriety, so I've had to be on antidepressants on and off. But I can tell the difference of my depression because I've been around long enough. I can feel when it's that physical imbalance. I mean, it's a disease. I mean, depression is a disease also. So you can feel when you're in dis-ease uh, with your body and that the chemistry of that. I can tell the difference, whether I'm just being a depressed a baby, whether I'm just not getting my way, or if it's that physical sensation. I can tell the difference because I've been around for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna. And the great thing about antidepressants is it doesn't change the way you feel.
No.
It just puts a floor down and a ceiling up so that you don't kill yourself. So it can be a good thing. And so because see, if I don't take them when I start getting that physical sensation of the imbalance, I go into a deep dark abyss. I suffer. I can't get out of bed, and there's nothing I can do with the AA program that is going to fix that, to help be a solution for that. So I have to wait it out, or I can take some antidepressants and get out of that abyss faster and get back on, the path of being present. Because if I go down to that abyss,
And useful.
I'm not present. It's And I know people that have taken that are bipolar, and they'll start into the 12-step thing, and they start feeling better, and so they stop taking their medication because they don't know if it's the program that's making them feel better or the medication. And it's probably both. But they want a miracle. They don't want to be on medication anymore, so they stop taking their medication, and then they go way down into the abyss. And I've seen people kill themselves because they stopped taking their medication.
I'm a firm believer in live and let live,
Yeah.
right? And also, and that I can't run anybody else's program, right? And it's not up to me to judge anybody else's position, really. So I don't know whether someone else's recovery is good or bad. I can't judge it, right?
Yeah, I get it.
Now, there is a lot of, nonetheless, I have come across quite a few people who say, well, if you're in the program, you can't really be on antidepressants and this, that, and the other. What is your opinion on this?
If you're enjoying this podcast and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe.
Well, here's what I say. It also says in the big book that if we need outside help, that we should get it. And it also says that we are not doctors and we are not psychiatrists.
That's right.
So that we should go to people that are actually professionals in that and get their thing. Well, from that example I just gave you, someone that's bipolar that stops taking their medication and then they end up killing themselves. They needed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people, let's say someone with schizophrenia, and then they come to AA. If they stop taking their medication, they're still going to have schizophrenia.
Yeah, that's right.
And the 12-step program, it may ease that, but because it does help us learn to look at life and situations differently in a more positive way. But people that I've known in AA that are either schizophrenia and bipolar, is very dangerous if they stop taking their drugs.
Absolutely. And so just for us to be very clear, we talked a lot and we just had almost, chuckled a little bit about the depths that we can go to. That is because today, thankfully, one day at a time, we're in a good place. But if you are not in a good place, then please seek help. And if you are on medication or if you need medication, speak to your doctor and follow their advice. Just to be very clear.
Yes. What he said, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Because that's just it. I mean, there's so many mental diseases that we, but yeah, they have that one program called the dual diagnose problem, with people that are alcoholics and they have then they need this medical help. So, there's a program for everything, which I
Wonderful.
love.
Yeah.
And that's why when we find these certain, let's talk about the tradition, the singleness of purpose is like, that's why they have all these different A's, like the alcohol, you can talk about that. You can, the narcotics, you can talk about heroin, CA, you talk about cocaine. But the thing with CA, I find they include everything and make everybody feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So I love CA because at first I was like, oh, wait a minute, I wasn't really a coke addict. And they're just like, yeah, but were you an alcoholic or did you do other drugs? And I'm like, yeah, well, come on. And I like it. It's very all inclusive.
Very much so.
But then there's these other ones, like if someone doesn't understand clinical depression, like I had a sponsor and he says, you know what, I know about alcohol, but I don't know about clinical depression. Find somebody in the program that does know. So I did. And the beautiful thing about that is they understand how you feel. And that's just like one alcoholic talking to another. You don't even have to, you can talk your head off and I'll be shaking my head up like, Yeah, I get it, and it's such a relief. Same thing with drugs. You find a drug addict and you're a drug addict and you talk to them and it's just like, oh my God, they get me, you know, and that's the beauty of these programs is finding that where I don't feel different. You talk to a non-alcoholic and they're like, "I don't get it. Why can't you" or drug addict, it's just like, "I can't you really do that drug I can't believe" and they don't get it, and we get each other, and that's the beauty of this, man.
So our next question, our question 5, and you've already given us a preview just a little bit earlier, but our question 5 is, what other methods did you try to get sober before finding the rooms?
Well, as they always say at the end of that ad infinitum, I mean, a million different ways. Well, like I would go, because we used to club hop a lot in LA because we want to see one band playing at this time, another band playing at another time. So I would go out and I started, it was like, okay, each club I go to hear a band, I can have one beer. So I would have one beer. I'd go to the next club, I'd have one beer. And then, of course, at the end of the night, I already told you what I did. I went to my favorite bar and asked for a troublemaker to celebrate.
Yeah.
But what I did notice by having one beer at these clubs was that I actually would listen to the band, and I really enjoyed. I knew whether I liked them or I didn't like them, for real, because I was present. And that was interesting. I'm like, "Oh, this is kinda cool." The next one, I had another beer, and I'm like, "Wow, I'm actually listening to the band. I'm not here just to party. I'm actually here to hear the band, and I can hear them." So I noticed all these little changes. Uh, it was basically that, trying to control my drinking, but
Moderate.
and every time I tried to control my drinking, I would wake up the next day and go, "Oh my God, I did it again. I did it again." And so after a million of those, I did it again. I did it again when I was trying to control, because I cannot control and enjoy my drinking.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
enjoy my drinking, I will not control it.
So when I had some brakes left to the car, right? So so maybe I don't know, say really worn brake pads, right? And one caliper seized.
I can hear them squealing right now.
At that time, when I had some brakes left, I was so determined. I remember a few occasions where I was so determined to say, okay, I'm going out and I'm only going to do, I think it was 4 lines, right? For an entire evening. That was my thing, and there were terrible evenings because one, first and foremost, of course I made the biggest lies known to mankind, because that's the first thing that you do, is you cheat. But the other thing was, of course, everything, the entire evening was just about how can I possibly best manage this, when, what time, where, who should I be with, who shouldn't, and so on and so forth. It's an incredibly stressful thing. So this,
it's horrible.
Yeah, this idea that you can either control your drinking on using and not enjoy it, quote unquote, or the other way around, really held true for me at that time. Of course, later on, this is when you haven't lost all control. Later on, when there was no brakes left and there was no choices left anyway, and it didn't matter. But yeah, I know that space, and it's not a great space to be in. That white knuckling, I have to absolutely do this and not do anything. I can only use one more time tonight, and that's it. And it was terrible.
Yeah, doing anything we can to not have to stop completely. And the thing is, I mean, because we think we're so clever and we try all these little tricks, and the thing is, man, that's when I finally have to throw that white flag in the air and go, you know what? I can't believe, and I was so mad because the party was over. And I stayed mad for a long time, and I cried a lot because I didn't, because I was losing my best friend, and I was kicking and screaming like a little baby, as I learned later when I find out about my ego that I am the queen. And if I don't get my way, I turn into a baby.
So, question 6, after coming into the rooms and that, you threw up the white flag and so on, as you just said, you come into the rooms, question 6, did you struggle with the word God?
Did I struggle?
Yeah.
Man, did I struggle. That G word. I kept thinking, I really like it here and I really need this AA thing, but maybe I could just kind of gloss over that G word thing.
Yeah.
Because and the reason why I find out later is because my ego, the power of me that was running the show, did not want to give up the throne. And I also found out by reading step 2 in the 12 and 12, so many reasons why I had such a hard problem with that. I was prejudiced. I had old ideas about that I was taught or told about this higher power, this well, let's just say God. I was taught about God. I was taught that God was cruel and punishing, and that if I wasn't perfect, I was going to hell. That it was like an exaggerated form of my dad. It's like if you don't do what God wants you to do, God is going to yell at you. God is going to make you feel bad. God is going to punish you. And so I'm like, you know what? Nah. But I find out that I had a lot of prejudices about and that's what I was taught. I've had to really unlearn a lot or notice these old ideas that were taught me, and now that I do have a higher power, I can ask my higher power to show me the facts and give me new ideas.
Yeah.
So the whole God thing has been such an advantage to me. But let me tell you. So finally, I had this spot. My first sponsor was like, "Well, you can trade in that God of your understanding of your current understanding for a new one that can be loving and caring."
Yep.
And I went, "Really? I could just pick a new one?" And she's like, "Yeah, you don't have to have the cruel punishing one. How's that sound to you?" And I went, "That sounds really good." So, but the problem was, like in step 2, the last line in the 12 and 12 tells me that this power can return me to sanity if, and always look for, and boys and girls always look for the ifs in the book, because
Yep.
it's going to tell me what I need to do. It's going to tell me my application. So God could, this power can return me to sanity if I rightly relate myself to it. So I'm like, yeah, but how do I rightly relate myself to it? Now, I didn't find out until I had 10 years sober how to rightly relate myself to it. And it's not because I didn't ask. Because I was always hearing people go, let go, let God, just turn it over. And I'm like, yeah, but how? How? And nobody really gave me an application for that until I had 10 years sober. And I found it's still my current home group called Prime Time out of LA, where someone from the podium said, when you meet somebody and you want to get to know them, what do? You talk to them, you spend time with them. You spend lots of time with them, you talk to them. Eventually, you might even trust them. And then the person said, and you can do the same thing with a higher power. And I went, finally, someone gave me a simple application. I mean, my ego would have never let me discover such a simple application because it doesn't want to give up the throne. And now I go home and I'm like, wow, okay, I feel weird talking to the invisible friend, but I'm going to try it because I've never had an application that I could try before. And I really wanted to get to know this power. So I start talking to it, and I say, you know what? I don't even know if I believe in you. I don't know if you're there. All I know is that someone told at a meeting told me I could get to know you if I sit and talk to you. And that if I ask you to help me, you might even help me. And that this way, you're not all flying around in the ether. You're sitting right here with me, and that we could become best friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give this thing a shot. So I started talking to this power. And I tell you what, it took some time because, my default setting is to listen to the self-talk that my ego tells me. All of this stuff, you're not good enough. This isn't real. That God is not, it's not going to help you. Stay with me. And
Sounds like my self-talk.
exactly. We all have that same sabotaging self-talk. And if I'm not being a bully to me, I'm going to be a bully to you. It's going to tell me shit about you. So anyway, I didn't, and so I started getting to see that there are really, I'm consciously sitting in the middle, and there really are two sides of me. There's two powers going on here. The power of me, and then I was getting to know this higher power by talking to it and spending time with it and asking it to help and to help me protect me from my mind, my self-talking mind, and I started asking it, show me the facts, because my higher power doesn't have drama. My self-talking mind, where the ego and the alcoholism live, that has plenty of drama and stories and BS, and so I started feeling the difference of which power I was with. And boy, my power of me really, where I had an unmanageable thought life, really tried to talk me out of talking to this higher power, because it didn't want to give up the throne. So it took a while to build a new habit, to know the solution is to talk to that power that's greater than me, where I'm safe and I'm loved.
Now, hot on the heels of this really beautiful explanation of how you can go from being fearful of God, being God-fearing almost, then finding a different concept, exchanging your old concept for a brand new one as instructed by your sponsor, to then finally getting a message through to you about how to do it, and even then you still had some time, it needed some time for it to develop. It's beautifully said and beautifully explained, and reflects my own experience quite a bit there. Hot on the heels of that, our question 7. How do you experience your higher power today?
Oh my God. I wake up with my higher power. I'm with my higher power from the moment I wake up into the moment I go to bed. When the guy who started the primetime format, Bob Anderson, he's dead now, but he used to say, I used to pray in the morning and pray at night, and then run the show myself all day long.
Yeah.
And he's the one that taught me to live moment to moment to moment to moment. And on page, I think it's 87 or 88, where it talks in the big book, where it talks about that pause, which I love. That Young says that the pause is the fourth dimension, and I agree with him, because every time I hit that pause button, I'm with my higher power, and it just stops everything. And I'm with my higher power, and the pause is one of the best tools in the world. But where it talks about that pause, it was either 87 or 88 in the big book at the bottom of the page. It talks about that pause, and then after that, it tells me that I constantly remind myself I'm no longer running the show. So it's always telling me. Constantly means moment to moment to me.
Yeah.
And so it's not telling me to pray in the morning and pray at night. It's telling me that I constantly need, moment to moment, I need to be with that higher power. And that's what they say, the constant contact. Constant, that means moment to moment to me. Contact with the higher power. Now, this takes so much practice, and I will never perfect it. But from the moment I wake up in the morning, I'm talking to my higher power. I mean, I might even say to my higher power, I don't want to get out of bed today, God. And I learned I could call it God. God is just a name. You can call it spirit. You could. My first name for my higher power was Hugh. I don't know why, but it doesn't matter. God is just a name. It's a word, but use whatever you like. But I wake up, and sometimes, and so I have to ask my higher power to help me get out of bed. I can ask my higher power to help me with everything.
Yeah.
And back when I was before I got to really be besties and Siamese twins with my higher power, I was talking to one of my primetime sisters, and I said, I can't get out of bed in the morning, man. And she went, why don't you ask her higher power to help you? And I'm like, duh. See, even the simplest things, my ego will not let me see how I can have my higher power help me.
You said something that really stuck with me, and I have to go back to it. I just can't help it. I loved what you said about Bob Anderson, I think his name was. What he said about, I pray in the morning, I pray in the evening, and in the rest of the day I just run the show myself. And that is, I think, the place where so many of us, me first and foremost, find ourselves so often. It's a really profound thing that, you do your morning routine in best intentions and so on and so forth, and then somewhat through the day things just slip out of your hands.
Yeah.
The whole day goes to pieces, and you wonder, oh, what happened? And you've got your inventory to write at night, and you kind of go, was I resentful today? Oh, hello? Was I afraid? Yes, all day long, and so on. It's really profound, that.
Well, what's funny is, we miss those little parts in the big book where it says that we have a constant contact. That means all day, moment to moment. We constantly remind ourselves we're no longer right. We miss these little things, and we don't know how to do it. But because of prime time and Bob A teaching me that let's talk about the 10th step. The 10th step is where I watch from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. I have out my watcher. So I'm watching, because the 10th step is so amazing. It's that one little short paragraph in the big book. And it tells me it combines step 4 through 9 all day long, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. Because the nightly inventory is a whole different thing. It's when I'm review everything and see if I missed anything. Because I'm watching moment to moment to moment to moment. And when I see a fear, doubt, worry, character defect crop up, immediately I ask God to remove it.
Yeah.
And I was so happy about that, because that's the application of step 6 and 7, because I can only ask God to remove a character defect or a fear or a doubt in that moment. So the 10th step is a moment to moment to moment thing. And that's why I love that, because all day long, and the minute a character defect crops up, I know I'm with the wrong power, and it tells me I can turn to that power and ask it to remove that character defect. My little, what I tell people is what I do all day for my 10th step. I watch, I pause, because when I pause, I'm with God. Watch for these things to crop up, and then I pause, I turn, and I ask. And when I ask, that means I'm talking to my higher power.
It takes time, though, doesn't it, to learn this, as you were just saying. So don't despair if...
It's total practice.
Yeah, if, like me, you fail on so many days.
Yeah. In the 7th step, in the 12 and 12, it tells me, I did not develop this character overnight. It's going to take time to build a new character on that spiritual path, because I am so used to going to my default setting, the power of me, where I run the show. It takes a while to build that new character with that new power.
Great. Thank you, T. You were just speaking about step 10 there. Our question 8, which parts of the steps were the most difficult for you?
Well, I mean, I came in as a defiant alcoholic.
Yeah.
All of them. To be honest, all of them. But let me just say, I mean, I told you about my struggle with that step 2 and step 3. And the great thing about my home group Prime Time is when it talked about the first step where that dash was and my life was unmanageable, they pointed out that it was my thought life that was unmanageable. So I really got to see what my alcoholism was, that it was a mind power disease, and it talked to me in my own voice, and it wanted to be the authority for my life and your life. And it was thought finding, and all of those things. So it was my thought life. It wasn't the world and its people. It was what my mind was telling me about the world and its people. And so when I got that, I'm like, wow, I've got that self-talking, you fault finding mind and never satisfied. And so I was truly convinced there. But man, it was that as I talked to you about, not getting the answers of how to form a relationship with that higher power, that was very frustrating for me for 2 and 3. And then learning to ask to bring that into that power into helping me with the rest of the steps so that I could actually see the truth, not what my ego was telling me in step 4, but let me see the truth. And then 6 and 7, I didn't get it at all until I got to step 10, because I can only apply that one in the moment I'm in. When a defect crops up, I can ask for it to be removed. I was so thrilled. Now 8 and 9, 8 was easy, because you're just making a list and say, oh sure, I can make amends to all these people. And then most people I've worked with in AA, step 9 is a stumbling block, because step 4 and 5, yeah, it's scary to write all that crap down and read it to somebody, but at least they're in your circle of recovery.
That's right.
When you get to step 9, most of these people are outside of your circle of recovery. So it's kind of like jumping out of an airplane, because you're just like, I hope I land on my feet, because I have to go and admit I had harmed these people, and I had quite a few of those, and most people. That's why we have to know what our ego is, because in step 9, a lot of people's ego jumps in, and it's because of their fear. Their fear that they're going to look bad, the fear that they're going to admit that, the fear that the person's going to not forgive them, the fear of this, the fear. So their ego crops in and goes, you know what? I don't need to apologize to that poopy dude. And so, but you see, as a sponsor, I'm very good at, because I know my ego and my fear so well, and I know how they block you. Because it talks about that in the 9 step in the 12 and 12 about how it blocks me, and it talks about in the big book too in 9 step how the and see, the ego and fear, that's the power of me. So I need to ask God. That's what I'm talking about, bringing God into all of my steps. I ask God, with that, I have to ask God to show up with me and make me right-sized and have no expectations, and to tell the truth, and to ask that person, is there anything I forgot? Is there anything else you want to tell me that I did that was hurtful that I'm not aware of? And what can I do to make it better, if there is anything?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's no surprise that the promises that we read, in meetings and things are the step 9 promises. They start with, if we've been painstaking, so if we've taken the greatest amount of care with making
Yes.
amends and finding the people to make them and so on and so on. If we've been painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. It's no coincidence that it is at that point that the promises are mentioned, So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that step 9.
Well, what's really funny about that is that people, I'll make a living amends, and I said no, 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 no. I'll write them a letter. No, 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 no. There are so many formats now where you can do face to face on the internet. I want you to look them in the eye and let them know and say, I've hurt you. I want you to, because you know what? Before the internet, people went face to face to these people, and that's the most powerful way to do it, and that's what sets you the most free.
Definitely. Thank you,
Yeah.
T. Our question 9: which character defects give you most trouble?
Anger. Thank you, Daddy. No, but the thing is, it's like that was the one that really got to me the most. And I used to tell people, you know what? I'm just an angry character. Get used to it. Love me or leave me. And I had no plans to do anything about it until I hit bottom. I started, every time I was angry, I realized I would, I might have, in the book it talks about, like, if I have an argument that I'll argue to the death, and then I'm like, for one moment, I'm like, yes, victory. But then the next day I would feel horrible because I'd realize, God, I just argued with my best friend, and that affected our relationship. I start seeing how my anger, how people don't listen to me when I'm angry, how they're scared of me when I'm angry. And the thing is, I kind of wanted people to start listening to me, and I didn't want to hurt their feelings. I didn't want to scare them. And so I started hitting bottom on that. And that's when I got to really, really, really put that application of step 10 in, because every time I was angry, I could hit that pause button before I opened my big mouth. I could hit that pause button, and I could ask God to remove it in that moment. And then the longer I stayed sober, the more I practiced this. Why do I get angry? Well, it's pretty simple, because I'm not getting my way. So, so I got to bring, with all my character defects, it's just like, okay, why am I getting jealous? Because I'm not getting my way. Why am I being self-righteous? Because I'm not getting my way. And it all boils down to me not getting my own way. So the more I practice this, but boy, I tell you what, at first when I hit that pause button, I finally could stop being outwardly angry. Then I got upset, but see, that's where that nightly review came in, because I could talk to God about, okay, God, thank you for helping me not lash out.
Yeah.
But now I feel like a doormat because I didn't get to say what I wanted to say. What can I do instead? And so God started teaching me how to communicate better. Well, you could have stayed calm and said this and said that. And one thing I noticed about my higher power is when my higher power has to tell me things that aren't easy to tell a person, it does it with such love and kindness that I listen. So I've learned everything from my higher power. But I tell you what, the freedom for having that 10-step thing, when my anger crops up, I pause, I turn to God, I ask God to remove it in the moment I'm in. I'm so grateful for that practice, because I rarely get angry or act out in an angry fashion anymore.
Thank you, T. Amazing.
Yeah.
Our question 10.
It works.
It does work, absolutely. Our question 10, even though I didn't believe it, but it does work.
Yeah, exactly.
Our question 10. What is the best thing recovery has given you?
Man, a design for life. A new design for life. And it's giving me, well, just like I'm talking about, I don't have to be that angry character anymore. I built it. And I will be until I die. I'll continue to build this new character along a spiritual line, and that I have this higher power that I didn't even know I believed in, because my ego didn't want me to believe in it. And as I said back at the beginning, when I fell off the wagon, I think we told that story offline, but when I fell off the wagon, and then the night I hit bottom from that, and I cut a deal with a power I didn't know I believed in. So I always believed in this higher power, but I never knew it, or I wouldn't admit it. And then when I finally learned how to have a relationship with it. And so AA, what has AA given me? Man, a whole new way of living, where I can, and I talked about the 10th step, where I have learned how to watch for these character defects. The fourth step pointed out those fourth and fifth step pointed out my character defects. So I got to see what was interfering with me having a good life, or me being able to have that close relationship with that higher power. So I tell you what has AA given me? Some amazing applications in the steps of how to live happy, joyous, and free and it introduced me to a higher power that's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
But I finally we're besties. We hang out all day.
And all night. Yay.
As we should, moment to moment.
Question 11, T. What would you say to a newcomer or someone wondering if they're an addict?
Go out and do some more research. But no, if they happen to come to meetings and they're wondering, stick around and listen, see if you relate to the feelings of others. You may not have the same story, but see if you relate to the feelings. And if you do, you may be an alcoholic, or you may be an addict. And take it easy on yourself. It's and just to listen. And if you are one, look at all the people in the room that have made, and I would tell them, I'm a long timer. Why do I keep coming here? Because it's a way of life that I get to be happy, joyous, and free. And when I was drinking and doing drugs, I wasn't happy, joyous, and free. And I would probably say to them, if you're in this room right now, you didn't come here because you were happy, joyous, and free. You came here because you have a hole that needs to be filled with love and understanding. Let me give you a hug. First I'd ask them, are you a hugger? Because if they're a hugger, I'll say, well, let me give you a hug and make you feel safe. Welcome. Here's a cup of coffee.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And our last question, our question 12. What do you want your higher power, with whom you hang out all day and all night, as you said, what do you want them to say to you, quote unquote, at the pearly gates?
What would I want them to say to me?
Yeah, at the pearly gates.
I'm so happy to have you here. I enjoy loving you so much, and I love the love you have returned to me. And guess what? You're a good learner. Thank you for paying attention to the things I was teaching you and doing your best to carry most of them out.
Yeah.
You weren't perfect, but welcome. Let me give you a big hug.
You've certainly been a joy to be with this afternoon, to your humor, your wit, your honesty. It's been absolutely fantastic. What a brilliant ride it's been. Thank you so much, Texas T, for being my guest on 12 Steps and 12 Questions.
Well, thanks for having me. And it's so nice to be on this path and this journey with you and with all the rest, because it's, I tell you what, thanks to this program and to my higher power, I have learned to really enjoy when my heart fills up with so much love. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know it could feel this good. And you know, with the drugs and the alcohol, I was always chasing that feel good. And all I have to do is hook up with my higher power, and I feel good. And it's that, but it takes practice, as we talked about. And so what I want to say to everybody who is new, just do the stuff. Don't overthink it. Just do it and practice, 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 practice. Because I have a quiet mind. I barely have self-talk anymore. And I can quickly move over to the power of my higher power. I can redirect my attention from the power of me to my higher power in a nanosecond. And that's from practice. And it works if you work it. Let those dots connect and keep going forward.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. You, dear listener, straight from the horse's mouth here. Thank you, Texas T.
You're welcome, darling. Talk to you soon.
We've come to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed it and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe. While this pod is based on the 12-step recovery program, it's not officially affiliated with any 12-step fellowship. 12 Steps and 12 Questions is not substance or behavior specific, it's fully self-supporting and not-for-profit. And you know this next bit. It's not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, and it neither endorses nor opposes any causes.